Well, hello, and welcome officially to the Global Investment Promotion Conference. It is being organized in collaboration with the World Association of Investment Promotion Agencies. Apologies for the slight delayed start. I got a bit lost in the virtual corridors, as it were, but happy to be in the correct room. My name is Fifi Peters, for those of you who are joining us and were not a part of just took a place for IPAs. It was an executive meeting just looking at new ways in which they can go about promoting investments within their respective economies. We learned the importance of country image in translating to greater investments, and how it was important, or why it was important rather, for a country to be seen to be doing good, for the country itself to do well. I will be moderating this session, and I am doing so from my humble office in Johannesburg, South Africa. A reminder to everyone who is on this call, there is interpretation available to you in the 5 official languages of the UN. Please do select the language of your preference. We have quite a marathon of a program in store for you today, as we have important conversations on attracting investments in key sectors of the economy, from healthcare as well as tourism. As IPAs, you played a very important role throughout the pandemic in ensuring that existing investors were up to date and were in the know of their investments within your respective countries, by communicating all the information to them that you could in real time, as much as was possible. But now you will have an equally important role to play as IPAs, as your countries look to chart a sustainable recovery from the pandemic. Your role, of course, being to woo capital and ensure that capital feels at home within your respective countries. And so this is the conversation that we will be having throughout this morning, and I'm certainly looking forward to a fruitful session with you all today. You can share any comments that you might have, react to anything that you might hear from the respective speakers this morning in the chat function. You can also ask any questions there, and we will take as many as time does allow. Feel free to share your experience with us this morning on social media. Also, the hashtags and the handles rather to use is at UNCTAD, and also at UNCTAD WIF, as well as at WAIPA.org. With that said, I would like to invite to the virtual floor Mr. James Zahn, Director of the Division on Investments and Enterprise at UNCTAD, for the opening remarks. James, good morning to you, sir. Good to see you again. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Fifi. It's a great pleasure to see you again. Thank you for your support to help us. Excellencies, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to join this event in collaboration with WAIPA, and we have the president of WAIPA, Faha, is here. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this Global Investment Promotion Conference, one of the highlights of the World Investment Forum. I look forward to the coming discussions.
Recording in progress.
Challenges, opportunities for the global investment promotion communities in the new era of economy. Allow me first to give you a brief overview of the current global FDI trends and its outlook. Yesterday, we just issued a new Global Investment Trends Monitor to present the latest developments in global FDI flows. As you're all aware, that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused the kind of triple challenges among supply, demand, and the policies. And as a result, the global FDI flows fell dramatically in 2020, reaching only $1 trillion from 1.5 trillion in 2019. And it was the lowest level since 2005. Now, the good news is that the latest figure we have for the first half of this year, that the global FDI outlook for 2021 is improving, and it's improved from the earlier projections we had. Global FDI flows in the first half of 2021 reached an estimated $863 billion. And this shows a kind of stronger than expected rebound momentum. The increase in the first 2 quarters recovered more than 70% from the COVID-19 pandemic induced loss in 2020. Nevertheless, the underlying trend is more muted than the first half of 2021 recovery in nominal terms. The net of conduit flows, one-off transactions, and intra-firm financial flows, the real growth in FDI flows would be much lower. So the current momentum and the growth of international project finance are likely to bring FDI flows back beyond the pre-pandemic level. That's an interesting phenomenon, and that generates a lot of opportunities for IPAs. Now, during the crisis and the duration of the health crisis and the pace of vaccination, especially in developing countries, as well as the speed of implementation in infrastructure investment stimulus remain important factor of uncertainty. So what I'm talking about is that at the moment, it's the developed countries driving the recovery momentum, while developing countries still tracing. The other important factor, risk factors that include the labor, the supply chain bottlenecks, energy prices, inflation pressures, they will all affect the final year result. So we still don't know yet what will be the result, but for sure we know the recovery is faster than we expected. While investment flows are back on the recovery path, this recovery is concentrated in developed countries, as I said, and when it comes to the investment in sectors relevant to sustainable development goals, greenfield investment and the project finance in developing regions dropped drastically since the pandemic. This leaves behind more vulnerable countries and put at risk the achievement of the sustainable development goals. FDI remains critical for many countries, as you all agree, to develop productive capacity, create jobs, access technologies, and to spur economic growth. The task of investment promotion agency is to promote such investment and facilitate these projects, particularly during the periods of economic distress. This conference will deal with 2 sectors that were severely affected by the COVID-19 crisis: the health sector, which has been at a pandemic center, and the other is the tourist sector that was devastated by the travel bans and the lockdowns. So it goes without saying that IPAs and other government institutions that support the private sector, including special economic zones, have played a critical role in supporting their governments in efforts to retain investment, support their business communities, and fight the health crisis. IPAs have also started to promote investment in sectors that receive increased demand and policy focus due to the pandemic, such as healthcare. Our recent UNCTAD survey revealed that 75% of the IPAs in developing countries and 75% of IPAs in developing countries and 42% in developing countries are now promoting investment in health through their outreach and engagement activities online. But there is a significant disparity among the IPAs with respect to the scope of their promotional campaign and the services and incentives that they offer. We hope that the panel of investment promotion in health will provide more insights on investment opportunities in this sector and how to attract these projects. So today, immediately after this conference, UNCTAD will award some investment promotion agencies for their excellence in promoting investment in health. The tourism sector was one of the hardest hit and vulnerable, particularly in vulnerable countries, including small island developing states and the least developed countries. And they have been on the receiving end of the tourism. On the one hand, the governments have reacted quickly through creative incentives to tap into new opportunities brought on by the pandemic, such as visas to work remotely. But businesses in the tourism, hospitality, and event management sector, on the other hand, have adapted and reinvented themselves. Questions that can be asked are, what did their governments do to safeguard industry? What did the hospitality industry do to survive? And how can IPAs help retain investment and identify new opportunities? I hope that the discussion today will shed some light on what can be done to revive the sector. Let me close by thanking our long-term partner, the World Association of Investment Promotion Agencies, for its support to the World Investment Forum and for organizing its annual World Investment Conference as part of the World Investment Forum. I would also like to thank the World Health Organization, the World Tourism Organization for co-organizing the conference sessions. In times of crisis, these partnerships are critical, and we look forward to continuing our cooperation in support of sustainable development and prosperity for all. We should also like to take this opportunity to thank my team led by Paul Wessendorf and with great support from Stephanie Bonilla and Natalia Guerra. Thank you very much. Look forward to your productive deliberation. Back to you, Fifi.
Thanks so much, James. And thanks for injecting some good news into the session, just looking at what FDI flows have done and the improvement thereof. It's encouraging to see that the improvement has been a lot faster than was expected. Of course, on the downside, not so great news in terms of the uneven recovery that we have seen continue to play out between developing and developed nations. And it's something that we certainly need to put a mark on, because it's a recovery, and an uneven one, that is not sustainable if it continues on its current trajectory. I'd like to hand over the floor and welcome our next speaker for this morning, Mr. Fahad Al-Gergawi, who is the CEO of the Dubai FDI and President of WAIPA. Mr. Fahad, it is over to you, sir.
Thank you, Fifi, for your presentation, and we're looking forward for a great start of this season with a very good or excellent points my colleague James have highlighted. Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers and participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning from Dubai. It's a great pleasure to join you today at the UNCTAD Global Investment Promotion Conference, held in partnership with the World Association for Investment Promotion Agencies, WIPA. I would like to thank the UNCTAD and the 7th World Investment Forum team for putting together a truly remarkable and inclusive program that delivers on the promise of partnership, inspiring action, as well as providing pathways for a better future for all. I'd like also to thank Mr. James Zahn, my colleague, the Director of Investment and Enterprise at UNCTAD, for his relentless efforts to forge meaningful partnerships that brings the global investment promotion stakeholders together. Today, or today's program addresses the need of today, promoting investment in healthcare and attracting and retaining investment in tourism. Two strategic sectors that will not only determine the pace, scale, and speed of economic recovery efforts around the world, but also will shape our human future as our world continues to change rapidly. On behalf of WIPA and WIPA members, thank you for your contribution to today's program. We look forward to a fruitful discussion and recommendations from the distinguished speakers to help chart and collect ways forward to, with confidence, accelerate the global economic recovery and enable a sustainable, resilient, and prosperous future for our communities, cities, and nation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You are giving me nostalgia. I was in your country just a few days ago for the expo, and you're making me regret why I left and came home with that scene behind you. But thanks so much for your remarks, sir. All right, let's start with the very first discussion then, looking at the health sector and what needs to be done to promote investments in this sector. And of course, this is being the discussion is being done in partnership with the World Health Organization. My panelists for the session for today, we do have Mr. Ali Parsa, who is the CEO of Babylon Health. We also have Ms. Shibon Bea Mukama, Director of Babel Health of Rwanda. We have Mr. Davis Musinguzi, the CEO of Rocket Health Uganda. Mr. Taegwan Kim, who is Director of Investment Inducement at Incheon Free Economic Zone Authority of the Republic of Korea, as well as Mr. Natalie Baruja, who is the Chief Corporate Relation Officer of Malta Life Sciences Park. Before we do get into that discussion, I would like us to look at this very brief introductory video from UNCTAD to set the scene. Our first intervention for this morning will be delivered by Mr. Ali Parsa. He is CEO of Babylon, and he'll just be sharing the experience of the multinational health company and also how it has felt the brunt of the pandemic. He is on your screen, and let's hear from him now.
I was born in a developing country, and then I moved into a developed country. I was an outsider, and then I became an insider. I was an immigrant, and I was a native, and I was young, and I'm now much older. And it doesn't really matter if I lived in a developing country, a developed country, if I lived among the rich or the poor, or I was young or old. What I discovered is people everywhere have the same needs, the same desires. They just have different opportunities. So when we created Babylon, we had a simple mission. Can we make healthcare accessible, affordable, and put it in the hands of every human being on earth? Can we, by combining the latest and cutting-edge technologies with advances in medicine, do with healthcare what has happened in so many other areas of our lives to democratize accessibility and affordability? Now, I was a scientist, I was a physicist. I wasn't necessarily very good at it. That's why I'm not doing it now. But one thing I learned in physics is that if you take a problem and take it into its constituent smaller parts, you could solve them much easier. So if you look at that statement of accessibility and affordability, what we thought is that as long as we can deliver most of the healthcare most people need on devices they already have, these mobile phones that we have more of them than human beings out there, and these mobile phones were getting smarter and smarter by the day, then we should be able to make healthcare highly accessible. Today in Rwanda, we do as many consultations as we do in United Kingdom. The question is, there is no accessibility without affordability. And when you look at where the costs in healthcare are, irrespective of what geography you're in, almost 2/3 of all costs sit in salaries, in doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals, are among the rarest and often therefore the most precious resource of any country. And what we thought we need to do is automate as much as possible of what they do, that machines do as much as of the simpler parts of what they do, so they can do the harder parts. If you cut the costs in healthcare in a different way, on diseases and ailments, what you find is 70% of all costs are in predictable, preventable diseases. So if we can collect as much data from people as possible to simulate, to try to predict the future, and therefore to be able to intervene early, we should be able to change that industry we call healthcare, which is truly not healthcare, it's sick care. It's about managing crises and emergencies, and turn it into what it should really be, which is to keep people at the peak of their health. We love to find partners who feel the same way as we do, who want to join us in our mission, who want to partner with us to make healthcare accessible and affordable for every human being on earth.
A basic right, I think that you'll all agree with me in saying, but let's also invite Ms. Siobhan at this stage just to give her intervention. Siobhan, I think quite a number of African countries or countries also in developed economies are looking for multinationals to invest and set up in their respective healthcare sectors, just as Babylon has done in Rwanda. Talk to us about what some of the factors are, Siobhan, that did make Babylon invest in Rwanda and set up Babel Health Rwanda.
So thank you so much for inviting me to this conversation, and very nice to speak after Ali Pasa, who is the founder of the company that I work for. So in our case, to come to Rwanda, it was under the invitation of the government of Rwanda. And the government of Rwanda is very specific and deliberate about being a proof of concept countries. And they'll go out there and look for companies who suit this need. And it's not just come and prove your idea, is how can we support you to do that? So when we came to Rwanda, obviously we wanted to do our own analysis and look at the ecosystem and see that, and certain things in the work that we do change. For example, in how we actually deliver the healthcare. Instead of using an app, we now use the USSD, which is more suitable for the environment in which we operate. But what happened is, when we did come to Rwanda, one of the things that we looked at was how will people pay for the service? And Rwanda is one of the few countries that has universal healthcare system. So it doesn't matter how affordable you make, as Ali said, accessible and affordable you make it at the front of the line, the whole ecosystem has to work. So even when we made the product, the consultation cheap, people have to actually go to a pharmacy. People have to actually go and get a laboratory test, and that's where sometimes the cost is. And so one of the things that we did speak to the government of Rwanda is that everybody, over 80–90% of the population use universal healthcare. Can we be part of the system so that when people do treatment with us, then they can go to a physical facility or a laboratory test and use their healthcare systems to do that. The other thing that did work for us and which is very critical to that conversation is that we did, the government allowed us to put our platform in all the health facilities in the country, so that if somebody does a consultation digitally in Kigali, if they come from village A, they can go to a health facility and get their prescriptions or laboratory services in in their local health facility and to be able to do that. The other thing also is around infrastructure and I think that is very important to have infrastructure in place. For companies like ours, everybody uses internet. If you're going to go and get your prescription in a village A, you need to be able to take a physical code, a 16-digit code, which you have to put in our platform that we've put in all these health facilities, but you need internet. So 95%, over 95% of the country is covered with internet, which allows us to be able to operate in Rwanda. So it's things that did work for us that make the journey work with you. Then maybe one last thing I wanted to also add is that when you go into a country and it's a country that you're coming to operate in for the very first time, there's so many departments. The government is, what is government? It's, you know, it's everything and all the different facilities, governments, different arms of the government. One of the things that we do like about Rwanda is there's a central place who has the power to convene other players within the healthcare, within the ecosystem, called the Rwanda Development Board. And it could be issues around taxation. It could be issues around dealing with a partner. It could be issues around, you know, they have the power that you don't have. And also they can be a convener. So somebody who can actually walk the journey with you and make it easier to sort of like be able to actually participate within the ecosystem. So I think that those are some of the things that I think that were really critical for us to be able to work in Rwanda.
So quite a number of points that you have mentioned there, Siobhan, but just speaking to a government that seems to have been quite open to engaging with the private sector, taking advice on how best to bring in investments in a particular space. I think the readiness of your infrastructure also made Rwanda quite an easy place to just, you know, walk in and not necessarily look back or ask too many questions. So thanks for that intervention at this stage. I'd like to ask Mr. Davis Musinguzi, who is CEO of Rocket Health. Rocket Health provides telemedicine services in Uganda for his thoughts on this conversation around promoting investments further in the healthcare sector. Davis, good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. What makes Uganda a good market for telemedicine in your view? And can this be easily duplicated in other countries on the continent, sir?
Good morning, everyone. It's a very early morning on the East Coast, so making myself quite as comfortable as I possibly can. It's a real pleasure to be here to kind of share these insights and kind of talk about investment in healthcare in Africa. Not just Uganda, because I think many countries across Africa pretty much share very similar disease profiles, whether you're looking at infectious diseases, which was historically quite the challenge, and now kind of making that transition into non-communicable diseases, which is also a pretty dominant and expensive path to take when it comes to treatment. So what role does telemedicine have to play? I think one of the biggest challenges African countries have always had with healthcare is largely been with their infrastructure. Being able to set up hospitals and outpatient clinics is extremely expensive. As much as governments may want to put a clinic or a hospital at every village or every county or district, this is an investment that goes way beyond just government to achieve, but also requires private sector involvement, meaning that there has to be some level of attraction to making these investments in terms of a return. So what telemedicine really does offer is a shortcut, a hack that makes it possible for anybody who has a mobile phone device to be able to reach a qualified licensed professional. And in some villages, people may go their entire lifetime and not have an interaction with a doctor because doctors may not want to work in hard to reach areas. But for so long as there's a mobile network connection, what that means is that my grandmother can take a basic phone, dial in a USSD code, and have a medical doctor call her back and give her a quality consultation. That is what access really, really means, is that it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, how much you have. If you're in need of a healthcare service, you will be able to access it. And And that, I think that's the beauty that telemedicine brings, not just within Uganda, but I think, across the board. And, any medical professional will tell you that 80% of a diagnosis is actually going to come from history taking. If you do take, proper history of somebody's symptoms, chances are that you will be able to narrow down to a very small set of possibilities that you can then be able to treat or even confirm via, diagnostics and so on. So we do see a huge opportunity for telemedicine growth. At Rocket Health, we have seen our telemedicine uptake improve by 6 times, over 600%, just year on year. So I think it does show that there are real possibilities for adoption and, room for investment in the private sector and by governments.
Certainly, and especially as you talk about the hurdles that governments are able to overcome slightly by jumping over the very high costs that are needed to establish, for instance, traditional hospitals. But on the other end, one has to wonder if serious investments also need to be made in the digital ramp up, right, to ensure that citizens are able to access the full boutique that telemedicine can offer. Davis, coming back to you in just a short while, but we're going to get the perspective now of a special economic zone or a free zone, and just to find out the role that these respective zones, which have become important in most countries. I can speak for South Africa in my country, but the importance that these respective zones play in attracting investments. And this intervention will be given to us by Mr. Tae Gwan Kim, who is Director General of Investment Inducement in Incheon Free Economic Zone of the Republic of Korea. Sir, good morning to you and thank you for joining us. How effective are special economic zones that target healthcare services or medical cities in attracting investments that strengthen national healthcare systems?
Thank you, Ms. Bepi. I'm Tae Kim from Incheon Free Economic Zone Authority in Korea. I'm pleased to meet you all today. Incheon Free Economic Zone was designated by Korean government in 2003 using specialized law of free economic zone benefits such as land formation costs, tax incentives with the administrative support. IFS is a gateway to Seoul, taking advantage of its geographical locations near an international airport and a harbor. It is optimized for creating cold chain and hiring talented workforce. We invited anchor companies Samsung, Biologics, and Sartorium 10 years ago. Also, we form an innovative bio ecosystem by training bio-specialized talents, fancy sport, and much more. As of 2020, more than 60 bio-related corporations in Songdo exceeded $30 billion of sales, hiring over 6,000 employees. By 2030, we aim to put all companies, including supplying tools and materials of a biopharmaceutical industry, in a site 2.5 times bigger than now, with the 300 companies moving in, hiring 50,000 workforces. IFS has been offering integrated one-stop services. When the companies look for their land in Korea, we can offer it at land formation cost. We will be on the wagon together to resolve issues on gaining approval and build a facility for high-level research human resources training. We aim to nurture bio cooperation, creating jobs, training professional workforce. We established the foundation of the innovative Incheon Bio Cluster, an open innovation-based setup ecosystem that helps the subsidiary materials to be localized. We aim for Songdo to be capable of developing and managing vaccine and medicine for global market. So IFS has been very important key role to effective supplying the vaccine or kind of a medicine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now for a perspective from a life science park. And Mr. Nathalie Farougia, who's Chief Corporate Relation of Malta Life Sciences Park, is joining us. Nathalie, good morning. What are the factors, sir, that make a life science park in Malta so successful?
Hi, first and foremost, good morning to all, and thank you for the invite to be part of the panel. I would say that from the experience of Malta having a life sciences park, we were successful in creating the ecosystem and the infrastructure that also previous participants were referring to. The fact that you are able to create an environment where companies can network so they can share ideas, and apart from that, they will have all the infrastructure they need to focus on their core business. So when a company is looking at investing in a foreign country, essentially their focus needs to be on their core business. So they do not need to worry or think about infrastructural issues. So what we did with the Life Sciences Park is exactly this, creating a space where companies can come, they will find all the infrastructure that they need. And more importantly, perhaps we have also managed to create an environment where academia and the private sector can meet. And we have seen that when academia and industry come together, they are truly in a position to come up with fresh ideas and provide solutions to issues that we might be facing at a particular point in time. During the pandemic, for example, we have seen that, for example, patients were finding it difficult to access healthcare because essentially they were afraid of going to hospitals or visiting their usual doctors. So there we have seen the opportunity for businesses to come up with solutions. So again, the issue of being able to create networks and to create collaboration has very much proved to be a success story, also to push research and development. So even the idea of creating incentives and pushing companies as well as startups to carry out research and development, I think that's a very valid point that all companies interested in attracting healthcare-based companies should look at.
Thanks, Nathalie. And do forgive me for introducing you incorrectly. You are kind for having not corrected me. But just staying with you as we perhaps take one last round of questions, what do you think has been the impact of the pandemic? And which key sectors or subsectors in health will you be prioritizing going forward?
So as I have said, the pandemic has highlighted a number of sub-niches that traditionally within the healthcare sector, I would say that the majority did not provide so much support for these sub-niches. We have seen a substantial increase in medtech related companies, so companies which will incorporate technology together with the medical sector, which will, at the end of the day, provide more access to patients, to the medical infrastructure. We have seen that there is huge potential in regards to personalized medicine. Mr. Parsa has referred to this issue that we should all work towards preventing health issues rather than sorting the health issues when they appear. So we are seeing quite a push and an opportunity for personalized medicine. And as I have said, research and development elements are being crucial to attract new companies. Even when it came to the pandemic, we have seen a number of startups coming up with solutions or with ideas that can either have an early detection of infectious diseases, or else if there is a spread on of an infectious disease, to identify the source and therefore how to manage that source. So I think these three sub-niches will be crucial for the development of the healthcare industry in general.
All right. Mr. Taegwan, I hope you're still with us there, sir. Just in terms of your role in the free zone, what can make your job easier by way of what can your government or governments around the world that are trying to use their special economic zones to attract further investments, what role do they have to make your jobs easier?
Firstly, Free Economic Zone offers one-stop services through the collaborative work of central government and the local government. I feel the local government offers companies an available site at the land formation cost and as a lab hub and a bioprocessing training center to pursue vaccine R&D manpower trainings. The central government's law that helps in Free Economic Zone and gathering intel about this massive project involves the economic effects, urban planning, and people in it. So yes, it helps to bring more bio companies in IFS like that.
Thank you, sir. And David, so the same question to you by way of extension of government in helping to attract further investments in the telemedicine space, but the broader health space in Uganda. And by way of extension also the role not only of government, but also of investment promotion agencies in that regard.
Yeah, I think there's a very big opportunity for governments to play a critical role in how they shape up these new areas like telemedicine for the improvement of public health outcomes, but then also for the well-being of their citizens. And I think one of the things that they need to get to pretty soon is the regulatory aspects, because I think that creates comfort for investors that this is something very deliberate that government is doing to make sure that they can grow these kind of telemedicine innovations. So whether it's around online pharmacy regulations or teleconsultation regulations, and also just building it within things like medical practice licensing, so that you can actually license medical professionals to deliver telemedicine consultations. So things like that can, play a big role in advancing the industry itself. But then in terms of investment promotion agencies, I think there's a real opportunity to present the opportunities and the market due diligence to larger corporate strategic players or other venture capital funds that are looking to get a return on their investment. I think we have shown that healthcare can be a highly valuable vertical in terms of startup valuations and growth in that area as a result of COVID-19, but then also as a result of people pursuing the need for more and better healthcare, especially during uncertain economic times. So I think there definitely is a unique opportunity for investment promotion agencies and for governments to just make that collaboration happen between telemedicine innovators and also where the capital resources are and also where the regulatory constraints may exist.
I think collaboration is a word that we've heard, I've lost count throughout this morning, I suppose, just speaking to its importance in moving forward. Siobhan, from yourself as well, perhaps you can speak from a private sector individual kind of level. What kind of opportunities to expand or investments will Bible Health be making going forward, either in Rwanda or perhaps there are conversations within your corridors at group level to roll out elsewhere on the continent?
So in Rwanda as a first African country, but we're in 17 other countries globally. And we're definitely looking to expand, and we're already having conversations with some countries to see the same thing that we're looking for. What does the infrastructure look like? What does the ecosystem look like? Would these countries be ready for the kind of investments Babo makes in telemedicine? But beyond telemedicine, we're also introducing AI in Rwanda. Actually, at the end of this month, we are looking to introduce AI in our call centers, which we do in Kigali, as a first stage, and then subsequently also extending this to health facilities, so that people can, even when they go to health facilities, they could be able taking advantage of our AI. And this is something that we're definitely looking to expand to other countries.
And just in closing, and perhaps very briefly as we wind down the session, I'd like to ask the panel for their parting shot on the conversation this morning around promoting investments and further investments in the healthcare sectors. Siobhan, I suppose just again, if we change direction and start with you, what would you like to leave your fellow participants and attendees who are joining in on this call with you from around the world?
I think that for me, one of the important things is having political will. Sometimes when you go to different countries and they say, oh, this is something that we want to do, are they following through? Is this something that is definitely something that they are putting their weight behind? And this also then speaks to the investments that allow that to happen. For example, in infrastructure, if you are encouraging investments into this particular area, are you putting the relevant investments around infrastructure to make that actually happen? The other thing is also legislation. This is also something that the governments have to play a big role. And I think that a lot of these things stems from what is the political will? Is there a will to actually innovate? Is there a will actually to do this? And once that is there, that's when you find that government then works well with private sector to sort of encourage and basically innovation within that country.
So political will and legislation, your parting shots. Davis, for you, what would it be?
Yeah, I would like to definitely see more investment come into innovative healthcare companies that are using technology to connect patients to healthcare services and professionals as much as can be possible. A big part of that definitely is consumer education. I think there needs to be several investments in consumer education for each of the companies that are involved in delivering these services to make sure that patients do understand that, yes, it is very accessible. It's it's much more affordable than brick and mortar healthcare facilities, but also more important than that is that you can still achieve the same quality of care, probably even better quality of care when you get an early remote consult, and that prevents further complications down the road, prevents any delays in getting care that could affect clinical outcomes, and it's just a much more convenient experience. So I think making those investments in consumer education that will drive up adoption will really increase the benefits to the consumers and reduce overall healthcare spending and create much more sustainable economies in the long run. And I think that's definitely a worthwhile goal for everybody to pursue in the ecosystem.
And Mr. Tae Guan, sir, your concluding remarks for us today, what would you like to leave us with, sir?
I'm happy to share my experience as well as a participant, and I do put all today's knowledge to advance more Incheon biocluster, and we will work more to have providing the vaccine or medicine to global well, and we'll share later more promotions, the investment globally. Thank you.
And thank you, sir. Last but not least, Ms. Natalie, your final thoughts on this topic, the low-hanging fruits that perhaps life science parks like yourselves see in accelerating further investments within the health sector, and perhaps even some of the challenges that you also see in this regard and plans to navigate what could be a difficult road forward.
So in terms, as I have said, in terms of the life sciences parks, if there is, like in the case of Malta, a very clear strategy and relationship between the national healthcare system and the academia, so even university, that will prove to be a success story. So in the case of our life sciences park, it is located between the General Hospital and the University of Malta. So again, the idea of networking and creating that collaboration. And a further point, having a main contact point for all the things that are required by the investor. This is something that Siobhan has also referred to earlier on. So having one contact point for investors is crucial because investors are not interested to spend hours and times trying to get through different government entities and departments to understand who is responsible for what. In terms of challenges, I think we have to look at the skills that are required for the upcoming new technologies that are developed within the healthcare industry. And there I feel that there are collaboration opportunities between different countries to understand the level of skills that are required for sub-niches within the healthcare industry and how we can share knowledge between the different regions, different countries. History has shown that we can really work together and we can learn from each other. So I think this, although this can be a challenge, it can be a great opportunity to work and collaborate between different regions.
Thank you, ma'am. I think that it has been encouraging to hear all the lessons that your respective organizations and even yourselves have learned from this past 18 or 19 months or so of dealing with what was an unprecedented shock to the world system that did catch everyone off guard, healthcare systems in developed countries as well as those in developing countries, which perhaps the challenges were a lot more amplified. I think that, you know, as the panel has shared, I mean, the importance of creating an enabling environment for business to feel welcome in the respective economies, the importance of the political will thereof and the legislation cannot be understated, as is the opportunity that does exist in a continent and actually in the world in which the opportunities for healthcare abounds as the basic right for all people to have access to good quality and affordable healthcare is something that cannot also be understated. But I'd like to thank my panelists for their contribution, all of them, starting with Mr. Ali Parsa, the CEO of Babylon Health that we heard from at the start, Ms. Siobhan Bia Mukama, Director of Babel Health Rwanda, Mr. Davis Musinguzi, the CEO of Rocket Health Uganda, Mr. Taegwan Kim, who is the Director of Investment Inducement at Incheon Free Economic Zone Authority of the Republic of Korea, and Ms. Natalie Ferrugia, the Chief Corporate Relation Officer of Malta Life Sciences Park. With that said, we have come to the end of the first discussion in which we were focusing on the healthcare sector, a very important sector and a sector that was also quite hit by the pandemic. We will be allowing for some time for the ushering of the next session. And at this stage, I would like to ask the panel and the panelists that have just spoken to kindly turn their cameras off to allow for a smooth technical transition with the new panelists that I will introduce in just a short while. The conversation we are having, of course, is putting the spotlight on the tourism sector, and we'll be having that in just a bit. So stay with us. And so we're heading to the last miles of our program this morning at the Global Investment Promotion Conference. And we're having a conversation right now on not only attracting, but also retaining investments in the tourism sector. You know, by far one of the hardest sectors hit by the pandemic as a result of the lockdowns, essentially bringing everything to a standstill and limiting the people that could move around. What has been quite encouraging to see, however, is just the pent-up demand that we've been experiencing as a result of many people being frustrated frustrated at only seeing the four walls of their homes in the past 18 months. As I said a little bit earlier, I recently come from Dubai, and I can tell you that the whole world was there, from tourists who wanted to see a new place to also business who was tired of the Zoom and the Teams meetings and respective conferences. So while we have pent-up demand, right, from the world that is expected to support the recovery of the tourism sector, there are some bottlenecks, however. On the other hand, perhaps if I share my experience briefly with you all, I have had 4 COVID tests in the past week. My nostrils and my throat, I can tell you, are in agony. And this speaking to some of the cumbersome processes that we now have to undergo as a result of trying to make tourism a lot safe, right? Fortunately, I think a lot of countries have started removing their respective partners from red lists, removing the element of quarantine. But that, again, an element that needs to be factored in to the tourism industry right now, and the added cost that it does bring to travel. So against this, the opportunity of pent-up demand and also the increased costs of quarantining and COVID-19, what does this mean for the recovery of the sector? We're having that conversation right now with our panelists, and I would actually like to first hand over the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Evelyn Weber-Cruz. She is the Prime Minister of Aruba, and she will be giving her brief introduction in this video.
Your Excellencies, distinguished and special guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to be invited to speak at the World Investment Forum organized by the UNWTO. As the Prime Minister of Aruba, a small island in the Kingdom of the Netherlands in the Caribbean, tourism is at the heart of our economy. Our tourism sector contribution, both direct, indirect, and induced, represented nearly 3/4 of our GDP in 2019. 2020 started off as a strong year. That all changed in the span of a few months. The world had completely shifted and international travel came to a standstill. The government of Aruba prioritized public health and safety and was left with no other option but to instate a temporary lockdown of our borders in early 2020. This meant that there was a sudden unemployment and liquidity issues. By taking immediate emergency and stabilization measures and coordinated an economic stimulus response with input from our private sector partners, providing relief included, among others, SME support, wage subsidy, and also fiscal relief measures for both individuals and businesses. To retain and increase the confidence for also our local investors and entrepreneurs is a key. On a parallel track, the government of Aruba immediately escalated its focus towards crisis management. This included, amongst others, the implementation of a revised marketing strategy, as well as the rollout of a new Aruba Health and Happiness Code certification, which helped ensure the safety and well-being of Aruba's visitors and locals. To partnering with innovative approaches for increasing seamless airport passenger facilitation. That is adhering to interoperable standards as well as data privacy rules and regulations. Aruba focused on creating a safe, a healthy, and a trusted environment for our visitors and citizens. To bounce forward, our nation embraced a new way of thinking and organized a nationally coordinated effort to develop its economic recovery and innovation plan, seeking economic growth that is smart, inclusive, and sustainable, and aims at putting crucial conditions in place for a resilient economy we need on the long term, while achieving immediate short-term benefits with the widest national support. As we're still experiencing the effects of the global pandemic, the world over, I truly believe that a highly integrated and synergized partnership between many organizations, public and private, has been a fundamental ingredient of our success, and currently the actions that were undertaken resulted in a faster than initially projected recovery of Aruba's tourism. And we will continue to be so as we move forwards towards becoming a sustainable, resilient, and inclusive Aruba. So, my advice to organizations and nations is to invest in the right partnerships to drive recovery efforts at scale. Thank you, and I hope you will enjoy the great discussions that will take place during the 7th World Investment Forum.
And thank you, ma'am. Now to head over to the Dominican Republic, where I will be handing over the floor to the Vice Minister of Tourism there, Her Excellency Jacqueline Mora. Good morning, ma'am. Over to you.
Good morning, and thank you, the UNTAD, for the invitation. And I could say that we in the Dominican Republic quickly understood the link between recovery, growth, and investment. You couldn't have more investment without a clear and a fuel and positive, clear and consistent tourist arrival that would achieve and restart investment projects that were stopped by COVID and the attraction of new capital. Our recovery, we think, it rested in 4 pillars: a clear plan and executed step by step, a tourism cabinet led by the President of the Dominican Republic, and a health cabinet led by the Vice President of the Dominican Republic. We took risks, but we prioritized safety, health, and finally, we worked with each market and adjust the approach to their needs. Many circumstances put the plan on risk, such as the rebound of COVID at the beginning of 2021, the closings we just saw at the beginning of January, but there was a determination to continue and a strength. The strategy was comprehensive and covered all the fronts for this sector. Best practices in sanitary management were implemented, such as the certification of all of our protocols with the Bureau Veritas and training all the correlations. We made sanitary bubbles in hotels and excursions, and we also launched an internal tourism plan that was called Ambassadors of Ours. The sector was prioritized in the vaccination, and 100% of all the employees in the sector was vaccinated as of June this year, okay? The entire value chain was supported on different fronts. Financial, fiscal, commercial initiatives were implemented. We developed an intelligence system in a record time to allow us to measure the impact of the initiatives, the impact of the plan on a daily basis. That intelligence system allowed us to detect new roads and to measure the sentiment of the tourists in order to be fast in making new changes. We also changed the marketing mix and we segmented communication, but we, at the same time, we reduced dramatically the marketing budget. Infrastructure projects were implemented in different destinations, knowing that public investment had to precede private investment. And we also were doing a betting on the future. It is good to say that the close management style, very characteristic of Minister Collado, has been important to generating trust and team with the private sector. The results are there. More than 50,000 rooms have restarted their construction process. We just had the best September in history in tourist arrival. Already in July, we exceeded the number of passengers for the entire 2020. And to date, we have almost 3.5 million visitors, including new markets such as Poland and Romania. The number of flights has tripled in the last 12 months, with an average flight occupancy of 88% compared to 49% at the beginning of the opening. Today, 8 out of 10 rooms are open with an occupancy rate of 65%. And Forward Keys predicts that we'll be leading the recuperation of the recovery, the winter recovery of tourism in the region, with reservations that exceeded 22% of those observed pre-pandemic. By 2022, we are expecting to have similar number of tourists than 2019. And we keep adapting, moving, and creating new opportunities every day.
Those are quite strong and impressive numbers, ma'am. The rebound of your country quite strong. Would you then say that perhaps the worst of the pandemic's effects are safely behind you?
We believe that. Okay, we can have a rebound, we don't know, but we believe that we have passed the worst part.
I mean, we were listening a little bit earlier to James Zahn, and he was also speaking about, the strength in the recovery of FDI flows, but also spoke about some of the risks that could present or could be present in the global system in the uneven recovery between the developed and the developing nations, as I think vaccine inequality also persists. So in your view, ma'am, what are the major risks for your country?
The last quarter of 2020 and the first quarters of 2021 were we saw the higher number in FDI in the tourism sector, right? The FDI was stopped, and then all that FDI will rebound. In the Dominican Republic, we were leading the vaccination. So I think that was very good. We have now like a stop, so we have new measures in place, but we are very positive about, because in the region, maybe we have a political strength. We have an economic strength. We are leading the economic growth in the region. Together with this political stability we have, all the measures and a clear view that we are helping tourism from the public side, I think all of that is combining to maybe work with the short-term risk might be arriving in the next 2022, but we certainly believe that we are working with the private sector, and that would be in 2022, a year better than 2019. And I think investment would be recovered in the short term.
All right, it's good to hear that you have your numbers firmly in place there, and you're quite optimistic about the outlook. Thank you. Thanks, ma'am, for your intervention. I'd like to now invite Mr. Sebastian Tandor, who is CEO of MCI, which is a global engagement and events company present in around 30 countries. Events, I can tell you in my country, really, again, it came to a standstill. In fact, quite a few events companies actually went bust as a result of revenue running dry. Sebastian, good morning to you. Just talk to us about your experience at MCI, what effect the pandemic had on your business, and what decisions you had to make to stay afloat.
Hello, good morning, and thank you for this invitation. So we are focused more on the B2B part of the, let's call generally speaking, the tourism industry. You know, the title is Investing in a Sustainable Development. The first realization that we had as an industry was that we did not have enough connections with governments. In other words, we were not organized in terms of having a lobby and a formal body to communicate. So actually the first thing that I did, I co-founded with a couple of colleagues in Switzerland, because other countries with my colleagues, officially an association capable of representing our voice, because that was missing. You cannot just go and call a minister, which a small country like Switzerland is possible, and have a meeting. You have to represent somebody, but there was no representation of a trade body. So this is the first thing we had to do in many countries, was to create this formal dialogue between the two sides, because the COVID required a response, a coordinated response. Then the result of these communications were either support, like we heard the two previous speakers talk about how there was a general support. But I must say that in many countries, there was the opposite happened. We had handcuffs. You cannot lay off people, you cannot transform, you're not going to get any help, you have to continue to pay this and that, no help from landlords, no help from nothing. And this was very difficult for an entrepreneur business, like this industry has a lot of entrepreneurs in this sector. So this was kind of the opposite. Great support, a realization from politics, okay, this is once in a lifetime. It's not like it's something on your list of your internal control system that you have to protect your company for. This is something unique, so we have to give a unique problem, unique response until the industry transforms. Or we had the handcuffs on the other side, which has been more constraint in already a difficult situation. So that was kind of the range. And in the middle, there was be an entrepreneur, make your decisions. That was fine. We did business. That's not bad, right? We took our responsibility. We did what we had to do. So generally speaking, the word that comes to mind is trust, because what we had to face is a trust issue with our talents and the workforce, and a trust issue with our customers, because the customers in the events business, similar in tourism, you're taking a decision for in 3 months, in 6 months, in 12 months, not for today, like every day, right? You need to plan something, an event, an organization, develop content, etc. So the challenge is that the client are not trusting that they're going to make an investment now that's going to pay off. And that's breaking everything, because they're not hiring us to do work for. They say, we will see. So therefore, on the other side, I have a workforce that have breached trust, where trust is broken also with the industry in general, not necessarily my company, right? In general, are they going to trust that this sector is a safe place to develop my career? And this is really a challenge for me, is that right now, trust is broken until we get stability, less volatility. And this is where the actions need to be focused on, bringing safety.
Sure, that's quite a difficult situation that you're in. And I imagine it's a situation that companies in your space all around the world can relate to. Sebastian, what then is your growth strategy or your outlook for your business in future?
So good question. For me, I was hearing before at your previous panel, when you did the closing, is you ask all the panelists, what do you take out of all of this? And I was thinking, oh, she's going to ask me the same question, so I need to think a little bit. And actually, my answer is what you said. For me, my communication is very clear in my lobby work and as a leader of my company. It's all about vision. I believe we will return, and that events and tourism is an industry we should bet on. So in other words, look far. That's what I'm telling all my teams. I know it's difficult right now, but we have to trust. And if you're passionate, if you believe in this industry, there are milestones. We're going to have to take a couple of decisions in between, but I'm building my company to be to the volumes I had before. And that's my filter for all my decisions. I'm not trying to make money next month. I'm trying to build a business that's going to be valuable for shareholders in the long term. That's really my every day is just focused on this. And of course, there's adjustments and things might change a little bit, a bit more of this, a bit more less of that. But generally speaking, I'm going in a direction that I believe it's an industry that's accretive to the world and the human race. Actually, I believe we need to meet, to get together, to enjoy those moments where we meet physically. That is essential.
Yes, this is true. But talk to me about the pivot that your business also had to make in this period where we couldn't meet physically and everything had to be done on a digital platform like we are meeting right now, and what role the digital offering that your business now will play in the future, and how sustainable could it possibly be?
Yeah. So, the digital transformation, I have to tell the truth, nobody knows what it will look like. It would be, I think, probably arrogant to truly make a statement of where we will be in 5 years. But short term, the transformation also wasn't that big in terms of my business, which is events, conferences, conventions, etc. As an example, in 2019, we have already produced over 200 digital events using different streaming and broadcasting technology. The year before, same thing, in the hundreds. 2020, we did 1,000. So that's 5 times more. And this year, it's probably 10. We did 2,000. So it was kind of relatively natural transition, but there's a lot of learnings. Not every country is connected to the internet. This is a discrimination in a way, right? The access to certain form. There's not an equity and an equilibrium in access to internet and video. Luckily, we could say this crisis happened in 2020 and not 10 years ago. We would have not had the same technology available to us. So the digital literacy is not the same everywhere. So that's blocking and creating not a sustainable world. It's creating a discrepancy again between two levels of computer development and digital literacy in the world. And that's, for me, is a challenge that is a real problem we have to solve.
All right. So you're still, in a nutshell, you're still quite hopeful and optimistic about the future of your business in the long term. Not too sure what it's going to look like and what the digital offering will look like in the long term, but business will still be there. And I think a takeaway that I have taken away from you is the fact that your industry in your country did set up a body to officially communicate with government around key decisions that needed to be made. And right. Perhaps if countries are in a situation in which they don't have this body, it's something that they can perhaps take a page out your book on, given that we don't know when the next crisis will be. Sebastian, I'm going to leave it there with you for now. Thanks so much for your time. And I would like for us to get the perspective also on hotels, right? You can't talk about without talking about the people that accommodate us and make our stay away from home a pleasant one as much as they can. And I'd like to get Ms. Inga Hugbrecht, who is the Global Senior Vice President for Sustainability, Security and Corporate Communications of the Radisson Hotel Group. Ms. Inga, thanks so much for your time. Just talk to us about how hospitality, or how your hospitality group has dealt with the pandemic and how you've had to adapt.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. And thank you to UNCTAD for inviting the private sector to the table to discuss this. It's really a pleasure to be here. Now, for Radisson Hotel Group, to give you a perspective, we are 1,600 hotels in 120 countries. And the pandemic for us, it came as a shock. Of course, we had seen it coming, developing in Asia, and then all of a sudden it was there in Europe, and it was there globally. So through the pandemic, we immediately went into handling this as a crisis. And then at the same time, quite early on, we started focusing also on the innovation in our hotels. How can we do things differently? How can we start accelerating our digitization, which we had already started? At the height of the pandemic, we had 30% of our global portfolio closed, and of course, the loss of business was tremendous, was higher than 75% in 2020. Now we have developed the Radisson Hotel Safety Protocol, which is our way of keeping our hotels and our guests safe, and we have that globally validated with a company called SGS, which are a large inspection and certification company, and that has really helped bring the trust back to travelers as we now come out of the pandemic. Now, the other thing, of course, we did immediately is we are an asset-light company. Most of the global hotel brands actually are. So the real estate doesn't belong to us. So a key partner for us are the asset owners. So we worked with asset owners from the start in all transparency to try and find the required flexibility to frankly make all of us survive. And the other thing that really helped us as a company is that we started before the pandemic in 2017. We had started a very thorough transformation process of the company. We called it our 5-year plan, but we had started an earmarking and putting aside and started to invest actually a total package of 250 million in our systems, in our assets, in our brand architecture. And because we had done that, I think we were maybe more ready to handle a shock like this than if we hadn't done it. So, and that also makes us ready for the rebound. We see very positive signs. We are prudently optimistic of getting to a full recovery in 2023. I think 2022 will not be the year for full recovery yet. We see good numbers in certain destinations, even outperforming our 2019 numbers, but globally, we think full recovery will be happening more in 2023. We have also, and that I think is important to know for the governments and investment promotion entities in this session, is we have managed to grow our portfolio by 250 hotels during the pandemic. So we grew our portfolio by 250 hotels that are ready to be converted, opened, etc. in the coming years. And that was specifically also done in countries around the world, but also countries that really are highly dependent on tourism, like Morocco, Spain, Vietnam, or countries that are developing their tourism, like Saudi Arabia, for example. So we see that growth happening, and we continue to have a very ambitious growth plan, which we are confident we can achieve together with our shareholders. So we want to add even 1,000 hotels in Asia Pacific in the next 5 years. So we are positive about that. Now, I'm very much in agreement also on the positive messages that you shared, Ms. Peters, when you opened the session on saying, you know, there's pent-up travel demand, events are happening again, countries are opening up. But I would also like to point for a moment to the challenges which I think we can solve together with the public and the private sector. One of the challenges that is really, I would say, you know, you could call it a big fourth wave tsunami that is coming, which is climate change. And I think this is the one thing that we need to address collectively together, because a lot of our destinations are vulnerable. And for example, climate change also has its impact on food security, on stability in locations. And I have sustainability as my hat and security also. So these things happen together in a nexus. So I think there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of things we can tackle together. The other thing is about the investment. I think what we have heard also is that we have invested as a company, but we also need to invest more to bring travel back and to bring destinations back and make them resilient. So I think we need support from partners, and we need support in a number of things. For example, in infrastructure investments. Sebastian was speaking about the digital infrastructure to bring meetings and events back, to bring tourism back. I think that is an essential one. And the other one, which we need to work together on, is the people, because in a lot of destinations, we struggle. We have the demand picking up, and we struggle to find people that want to work in hospitality and in tourism, and that have the skills to work there. Now, in a lot of the destinations, we as an industry, and that's not Radisson and on our own, but we as an industry, we have been working together on youth employment and employability programs. But it would be great, I think, as destinations recover, to also see the support from governments on this, maybe with some financial support to youngsters who want to come into the industry. We can train them. We can hire the people with the right attitude and train the skills. We are ready to do that. We can do that. That's one of the things we do best. And then you can have that multiplicator effect on livelihoods in your communities. And lastly, I think on sustainability, what we are advocating for, one of the things we have seen, and now as we recover, is sustainability is on everyone's minds. It's to mitigate the effects of climate change, but it's also what the traveler wants. So for example, in Booking.com's Sustainable Travel Report, which was published a few months ago, 61% of travelers state that the pandemic makes them want to travel more sustainably in the future. So that demand is there. And I think what we can all do collectively is actually align on sustainable recognition standards so that we make it easy for the traveler to book sustainable. And that is what we are doing. We're building that momentum amongst hotel companies, amongst major associations in the tourism and travel industry, because destinations and tourism and travel can only survive if we do this sustainably. So I think we have a couple of things we can do together.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And it is encouraging to hear that the Radisson is still on a, you're still opening new hotels. I mean, in South Africa, I can testify to the work that you have been doing recently. And what I also saw with the hotel industry is how you quickly pivoted at a time when we couldn't come to you. You transformed your services temporarily to become quarantine sites. Obviously not a sustainable business model for a hotel, but certainly encouraging to hear the opportunities you're talking about and the opportunities for attracting further investments in skills and also in the youth. Inge, we will come back to you shortly, hopefully if time does allow. But at this stage, I would like to invite Mr. Jose Martins from the Northern European representative of Cabo Verde Trade Invest to make his intervention on tourism, on attracting investments and on retaining them. Sir, it's over to you.
Quick facts about Cape Verde, our location. We are in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, west coast of Africa, South Canary Island. It's a Portuguese-speaking country. The capital of Cape Verde is Praia, Santiago. We are a quite small country with 500,000 inhabitants divided by the 10 islands. In terms of infrastructure, it's a well-developed country right now. We have 7 airports, 4 international airports and 3 regional airports. 9 seaports where we have 2 deep ports with terminal crews and everything. Our currency, this is something very important because we have the Scudos currency, but it's a fixed parity and back to the euro. So it's a huge key point for investors. So they feel comfortable and safety about the money currency and the back parity with the euro. So access to markets, we belong to the ECOWAS, CDAO, the CPLP, the Portuguese-speaking countries, and we have special access to the markets as US and EU with the special agreements that we have. So quick indicators economically. So I'm not going through all of them, but the country GDP in 2019 was $2 billion. We have a GDP per capita around $3,900. Our GDP structured very, very quite similar to the Aruba. 3/3 of our GDP structure comes from the tourism sector as well. So we depend a lot of our tourism sector. Human Development Index and life expectancy, all these things you can read on it. Literacy rate, this is really important. The human resource in Cape Verde has a huge percentages of well-educated people. So it's very easy to find good employees in Cabo Verde, and it was a huge attraction also. In terms of political indicators, we are the 3rd best in Africa by the Mo Ibrahim Found Index. Really good governments and mature democracy with regular elections and a peaceful transition of power. Actually, on last Sunday was the presidential election, and it was everybody was talking about how peaceful and how easy it's these things in Cabo Verde. So our business environment, I already spoke about the infrastructure and the modern telecom infrastructure. We have 8 commercial banks on the islands with 91 branches around the 10 islands. Free movement of capital for the investors with the international norms and regulation. No restriction for land ownership. This is really important for investors, hotels, and not only hotels, but properties. So the foreigners, they own the lands, and this is really important for them. And one of our biggest points is the attractive investment incentives that we have in Cabo Verde. So a few more points, the reasons why Cape Verde, then I used to say to the investors, why invest in Cape Verde? So as I said, first of all, the privileged geographic location of Cabo Verde, access to all those markets, the climate, of course, year-round sun shining in Cape Verde with very good weather condition, the political, economical, and social stability. It's as well one of the biggest points that attracts investors to Cabo Verde. And of course, our agency, since 2005, we have been doing a great job in terms of attracting and doing the aftercare and retaining those investments. So we have a one-stop shop agency with a very well-educated team that supports all kinds of investors in different languages. So the government in this point, we have been doing very great there. So I don't have time to talk about all the points that I have prepared here, but I can say that Cape Verde is investing a lot on the promotion, and one of this, I can show that I'm sitting right now in Gothenburg, Sweden. So we are investing a lot in the northern countries of Europe. So that's why we opened this representation office here. And then we have other ones together with our embassies across the world. This, I heard from the lady Inge from Radisson. Then she said they opened 250 hotels during the pandemic. Actually in Cape Verde, we had a very good 2020. We break all the records in terms of projects approved by our agency. As you can see on the figures, the average was always on the 200, 300. We have a good 2017, 600 million, but 2020, during the whole pandemic, our agency, we approved $1.2 billion in projects. So, and most of them started the construction. I'm talking about hotels and resorts and other infrastructure on tourism. So it was a very, very good indicator. Then the investors, they have full confidence and trust in the country. And some reasons, then the tourism, the FIDs, then they went up as well, because we were used to hotels, and then we start shifting for pure investments and integrated resorts with golf courses and bigger brands as well. We have the TUI and the Thomas Cook operating hotels like Rio, Melia. They are very good, very, very good hotels. But the last year, we started building Sheratons and Le Méridien, and we all know the quality, it's better and bigger. So the investment is also bigger. So normally a hotel room average price is around 100,000 euros per hotel room investment. Those brands, they reach 250. So that's why we had this increase on the investment amounts. And of course, we have now diversity.
Mr. Martin, hi. So sorry to interrupt there. Unfortunately, just in the interest of time, I mean, I would love to hear more about this. And I was wondering if you could perhaps share the presentation for us, for those who also, like me, would like to hear a little bit more and would be able to look at it in our own time. But I think that you have made your case very clear, really, you know, putting Cape Verde's best foot forward and speaking about the environment in which to invest and why investors should come there. Hopefully, when we get that presentation, those who do have any follow-up questions for you can respond, sir. We'll come back to you shortly if time does allow. But at this juncture, I'd like to push on towards the finish line of today's program. And I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Natalia Bayona. She is the Director of Innovation, Education and Investments of the UNWTO, a partner of this session. And Natalia is standing by just to give her agency's perspective on the latest trends, as well as the future of tourism post-pandemic. And Natalia, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And of course, thank you for the invitation, and thank you to the UNWTO and WIPA. As you all know, tourism has been the most affected economic sector when it comes to the pandemic. And of course, I would like to be brief on the data that we have related to the tourism sector. So first of all, tourism dropped. The international arrivals of tourism dropped by 74% last year. And of course, when we compare the international foreign direct investment flows, I have to say that it's a parallelism because, of course, 74% was the drop of foreign direct investment. On the other hand, we have to talk a little bit on where we were before. We have to remember that 72% of foreign direct investment in the past was thanks to hotels. There were more than 1,000 projects focused on, of course, private equity and traditional investments. And when it comes to jobs, more than 300,000 jobs were thanks to foreign direct investment in tourism. I have to tell you some positive fact, that is that besides the drop that we have in private equity and in traditional investments, we had experienced growth when it comes to innovation and startup investments. Only the last year we received, the tourism sector received more than $22 billion on startups. And of course, when it comes to the top countries, I can say that everything is super concentrated into Spain as the largest recipient of investment, China, USA, Philippines, and Mexico when it comes to jobs. So here the message is clear. First of all, tourism technology is here to stay. The more we empower the startup ecosystem, the better, because of course, besides all the challenges that we have today, investment opportunities in technology are here. Second of all, emerging markets has a strong opportunity to create foreign direct investment pillars by innovating in the way they are attracting investors. This is really key. For us inside the UNWTO, today, we have a strong opportunity to create or to move from traditional investments to green investments. And there is more than $24 trillion in investment opportunities when it comes to green buildings. So if we innovate on the way investors come into emerging markets, not only by developing tax relief or by helping on giving them different low incentives, and of course having a very strong government, that to us is the basic pipeline that every single investor is looking for. So in our perspective and in my personal perspective, what I feel is that today we need to create more incentives when it comes to companies that are creating ecological capital, human capital, and of course economic capital. The more you create those capitals, the more incentives you get in terms of taxes or in terms of training the people, among others. Today, we are working, of course, with UNCTAD, with the IFC, in terms of developing new vehicles that can help the hotel sector and the more traditional sectors to reshape a little bit their business plans into a more greener and sustainable business plans. Because, of course, today, during COVID times, sustainability and innovation have been the key to redefine the tourism sector. And of course, just to end, tourism is the top employer of youth, is the top employer of women. So if we do it well, if we empower well those youth into green entrepreneurships, if we empower well traditional hotels, traditional travel agencies, and we help them to come from traditional business into a more sustainable and green business, I pretty know that, of course, this sector not only will be recovered in the midterm, but also it will lead by example on the way the economy is going out and on the impact that the investments are creating into the most rural areas, vulnerable areas, and different areas that the traditional investments have been giving to us before COVID.
Thank you, ma'am. A lot has been shared by all of you. A lot of lessons, a lot of experiences have been given to us as a result of your interventions. And we are about to wrap up this discussion. And again, as with the previous discussion, what would your final thoughts or your parting shots be on the discussion around attracting and retaining investments in the tourism sector? I would ask that we are brief in the delivery, but Sebastian, I think you knew that it was coming, so I'm coming back to you. Just your final thoughts to share with us on our talk this morning, sir.
Just spur of the moment, of course, what was addressed a few times, addressing climate change. I mean, it's not specific to our topic today. It's specific. It's part, right, of a general topic that's kind of on my mind. And to be honest, where I'm most hurt, and where I'm spending the most time thinking about the future, is how can we really create the trust again in the talent pool, so in the workforce, that they stay in this industry, and we find the path to continue to educate and bring new even workforce and talents to this industry, because they might be looking elsewhere right now with less jobs. You just need to bring food on your table and you need to find a job, so they might be leaving this sector, and it's a challenge. Because I really believe it's an essential economic development foundation to invest in tourism.
I agree, and I wonder if in the interim, in the meantime, it wouldn't require the industry to be a little bit more open to a hybrid working model in which employees who love tourism and who are as passionate about it as you are able to work in the sector when the work is there. And when the work is not there, be able to supplement their income elsewhere, up until the point whereby tourism recovers, to the point whereby they're not able to juggle the two. I wonder, but the trust element is well noted. Ms. Inga, just your final thoughts on the talk this morning.
Yes, thank you. And I do want to come back on the sustainability topic, because I do think that whatever we do in destinations to grow tourism, we need to do it sustainably. We need to attract to destinations that are sustainable destinations, and we need to do this together with the local governments. We need to do this with the hotels. We need to think about infrastructure for waste treatment, for example, so that we preserve those destinations, that we preserve their biodiversity, and that we invest in the hotels, the destinations, the infrastructure, and the people, but all in a sustainable way.
Just on that, very briefly, how has the pandemic affected some of your plans as Radisson, your plans around sustainability, if that?
Well, I think it has affected our plans on two fronts. First of all, everybody is getting serious about sustainability. We've been doing sustainability. We come out of the Nordics, so we've been doing this since the 90s. So it's a long time since we've been into sustainability. But just saying, we've reduced our energy footprint, or reduced our water footprint by 30% in the last 10 years, which we did, is not enough. So we need to do more. We need to get serious. We need to align ourselves with targets based in science. So align ourselves with the COP agreement. So that's one of the things which we are doing and which needs to happen. And it's not just us, but other companies in the hotel industry as well. The other thing is what I touched upon before, is the clear recognition to travelers about what is hotel sustainability, because we have so many associations, so many frameworks, so many languages about this, that is absolutely not clear. If anyone needs to be an expert to know which is the right eco label, which is the right building eco label, etc. And we're really working on mobilizing the industry behind a clear hotel sustainability basic definition, so that we can have it in our own booking sites. You can see it on the OTA sites, and it will be immediately and instantly recognized by travelers, but also easy to access because we shouldn't forget that we have, yes, the big brands like ourselves, but we also have a lot of independent hotels, or even in our groups, you have a lot of franchisees who may be in a tier 3 destination, owner of one hotel, and we need to bring them along on the journey. So transparency and seriousness, I would say, is the two things that we're working on.
All right. Thanks. Noted, ma'am. Jose, for you, sir, what's the last message that you'd like to leave the attendees on the call with this morning?
Thanks again for the opportunity. As I said, we work hard to attract investments, and right now our focus is to retain them, to re-attract and bring more on. During the last year, we have been working a lot with the sanitary management, so improving all the health system in Cape Verde, hospitals and clinics, trying to build up agreements with international insurance companies, bilateral, so we know it's very difficult now to get tourists from, for example, from the northern countries. The insurance companies are allowing everybody to travel. So the idea is to build a bridge between Cape Verde companies and with the international ones. We are working with the SOS International as well. So we've done a lot during this year, and we are ready to receive people from all over the world. The borders are open. The planes are arriving, and we are so happy that the hotels are opening and the life is back. Thank you.
Thank you. I can feel the eagerness. It's very tangible from this virtual screen, but I think your message is well noted. And last but not least, Natalia, your final thoughts.
Thank you so much. As I already said, to recover the tourism sector is in our hands. So of course, my message to government is that it's time to innovate on the way we are doing public policy and in the way we are creating new laws and new incentives. The only way to recover tourism and to rebound it again is through a sustainable model, through an innovative model. And of course here, the power of government is crucial if we want that the private sector move forward into that direction.
All right, and thank you once again to you as the panelists for your various interventions and your ideas on the topic of attracting investments in tourism and also retaining them. And I think I'd just like to add from what you all have said, all the ingredients that are needed to successfully achieve the above is just the importance of what was shared earlier on with us during the IPA executive meeting, where we did learn and we did hear from the independent policy advisor, Mr. Simon Anholt, about the importance of doing good, about how doing good and doing well for your country is actually one of the most important things to raising a country's image, and actually does translate into tangible benefits for its economies. So I'd just like to add that as my final 2 cents to the discussion at hand. At this juncture, I would like to thank all the attendees who have been with us from the start of the session this morning at 8. It has been quite a long program, and I suppose right now it is time for us to go into the victory lap, as it were, and it is a victory lap in which we are going to be celebrating the investment promotion agencies that have excelled in what has been quite a difficult year to excel, right? That is the year of the pandemic 2020, and they have excelled in successfully attracting investments in their healthcare sectors. We'll be hearing from them, learning a little bit more about what they have done right, and also what we can do better going forward in learning from them. So in everyone who's still with us, I'd like to invite you to stay with us for the UN 2021 Investment Promotion Awards that continues to be part of the Global Investment Promotion Conference. Not only will we be looking at what IPAs have done well in attracting investments in the healthcare sector, there is a special award that has been included in this year's category, and that is the award promoting investments in the blue economy. So speaking to the issues of sustainability as well as climate change that the previous panel has just spoken on or touched on rather. I'd look forward to handing over to Mr. James Zahn, who is Director of the Division on Investments and Enterprise at UNCTAD, who will announce the awards for this year after this brief video.